We saw in the previous tutorial about RStudio workflow that the way we interact with R is through documents known as R Markdown documents, and that these documents are a combination of what are known as code chunks. So these are kind of windows into R. So this is where we write code to run analyses and things like that. But outside of those code chunks, we can kind of write an ordinary document. And I mentioned there that that Markdown is a language for formatting text. So we can write our document using this Markdown language, and then we sort of process our Markdown file and it creates a sort of a pretty report, for want of a better phrase. This tutorial is going to explain in a bit more detail how you format text in your R Markdown document. So first things first, we are going to open up the RStudio project that we've created in the previous tutorials. If you are a student at Sussex, I suggested that you save your project in the University of Sussex OneDrive. If you're following this from outside of where I work, just go to wherever it was that you stored the project that you created. So for most of us, I suggested having a folder called R_projects, and within that we created our first project, which we called My First Project. So there's a folder containing everything to do with that project, and within that folder there's an RStudio project file, this myfirstproject.rproj, which if we double click on that will open the project within RStudio. So just to remind you of what's in that folder at the moment, or what's in the project at the moment, we've got a data folder that contains a single data file that we copied across in a previous tutorial, and we've got our R_docs folder, and within that is the Markdown file that we created in a previous tutorial. So I'm going to head back to the main folder here. First thing I want to do is I'm going to create a new folder in our project. So I'm going to click on new folder, and I'm going to call this images because I want to put an image in there, and you should do the same. It can be any old image. I'm just going to put an image in there that I'm going to use later on. So having created that, we now have an images folder within our project, and I want to copy something into there. So here in my file system, my project folder now has this folder called images. So I'm going to go in there, and I've just got a different folder up here, which is where I'm going to copy a photo from. So it's actually a photo of my dog, and I'm just going to copy it across there. So our images folder in RStudio should now contain that file that we've just dragged across. Like I said, we'll use that later. So for now, what I want to do is create a new Markdown document. So we saw how to do this before. Go to the File menu, and then New File, R Markdown. And as before, we can put a title in there. I want the title is going to be About Me, so it's going to be the main title of the document. You can leave the author as it is or leave it blank, and then just click on OK, and that will create us a new Markdown document. And first thing to do is to save this. So we go File, Save As, and because we're keeping everything well organized, as explained in the workflow tutorial, we're going to put it in the RDocs folder, and we're going to give it a name, About Me. So again, if we look in the project within RStudio, in our RDocs folder, we now have a new RMD file called, or Markdown file called About Me. So, I'm just going to minimize that. So this is a template file. It already has a lot of stuff in that sort of explains what Markdown is, and I'm going to get rid of all of that. So I'm just leaving the first code chunk because that's a useful thing to have, and I now have a blank document that I can type Markdown into. Now let's just see what happens if we process this document without anything in it. So if we go to the knit button, this is going to convert our Markdown into an HTML document, which is basically a web document. So if we click on knit, here's our document at the moment. So it's got the title About Me that we gave it when we created the document. If you put your name in the author section of that dialog box, it will have the author there, and it automatically puts the date on it as well. And these bits of information relate to what's up here, which is known as the YAML, Y-A-M-L. So title about me is what appears at the top here, author and date. So if you didn't want the author, or if you didn't want the date, you could just delete those lines and they would disappear. Okay, so that's what we have at the moment. What about if we want to add some text to it? Well, the Markdown language is basically a simple way of writing text, but annotating the text to indicate how you want it formatted. Now, a good place to start is headers. So what happens if you want a header? Well, if you want a header, all you have to do is before the text, put a hash. And the number of hashes that you put determines what level of heading you have. So for a main heading, you do 1 hash and a space, and then whatever text you want in the heading. If you want a subheading, a level 2 heading, you'd put 2 hashes, then a space, and then the text you want in the heading. And if you want a level 3 heading, you'd put 3 hashes, and level 4, 4 hashes, always remembering the space afterwards. So in Markdown, you'd end up with something like on this slide, so hashes and then the text that you want. Now when you knit or process the document, these come out like this, so the hashes disappear and your text gets formatted in a specific way. So if you had 1 hash, you get a big heading. If you ask for a subheading, so if you put 2 hashes, you end up with sort of smaller text, but it's still bold, it still looks like a heading. And as you can see with level 3 and level 4, the they're still sort of headings, but they're getting kind of smaller. Okay, so let's try putting in a heading. So our first heading, and let's do it as a level 1, so 1 hash, things I like. And a few lines down, let's do another one, things my dog likes. Now, if you don't have a dog, you could put some other pet or a friend thing, or a family member, things my mum likes, or whatever. So we've got 2 headings now. Again, let's see what happens when we knit the document. Because we put these hashes there, we get 2 headings, things I like, things my dog likes. Okay. So what else can you do? Well, you can incorporate lists, and lists can be a bit tricky. So basically, for the first bullet point of a list, you want to put an asterisk and then a space, and it's really important to leave a blank line above the list, otherwise it won't process properly. So you'd have an asterisk as your first bullet point, so you could just have a bunch of asterisks if you have no kind of level 2 bullet points. If you want sort of sub bullet points, then you have to indent them with at least 3 spaces. I think a tab works as well, and then you use a plus symbol, and then the text you want in the bullet, and then a third layer you'd indent again. Again, I think it has to be at least 3 spaces. Tab to have a third layer of bullets. So that's what your Markdown looks like for admittedly a fairly complicated list. And this is how that would be knitted. So as you can see, anything with an asterisk in front of it, again, you have to have a space after it. That would be your first, that would be a main bullet point. Anything indented and then with a plus symbol is another bullet point. So let's try this out. So things I like. So I want to do a bullet list. Now, like I said, it's really important that you have a blank line above the bullet list. We'll come back to that in a minute. So things I like. Iron Maiden. Statistics. Well, that's it. No, that can't be it. Football. My wife and kids. Okay, that will do. Things my dog likes. Disgusting smells. Licking my face. Urine. He loves that. And cuddles from daddy. Okay, now let's have a look what happens when we knit this. We have a list of things that I like, things my dog likes, and it's been nicely formatted as 2 lists. Now we can add some normal text as well. So here is a list of my favourite things in no particular order. Here's a list of things my dog likes. Let's knit this. Ugh! Now, for my list, things have gone terribly well. I've got a nice bit of text and I've got some bullet points. But for my dog, it looks horrible. Now, why does it look horrible? Well, it's because I forgot a blank line before my list. If I put that blank line in, there we go, formats nicely. So tip number 1, which remember to put a blank line above your lists. Okay, so we can put lists in, emphasizing text, bold and italics. If you want italic text, you put it between 2 asterisks. If you want bold text, you put it between 2 sets of double asterisks. If you want something in superscript, you put it between 2 kind of hat symbols. And if you want subscript, you put it between 2 tildes. So these would format like this. So the italic text comes out as italic. The having two asterisks at either side of the text makes it bold, and you can see what happens with the superscript and subscript. Let's have a look at that in practice. So let's say I want to emphasize my wife and kids are my favorite things on my list. I put 2 asterisks on either side of that text to make it bold. And notice that RStudio has now formatted it in a different color, so I can see really easily that I've asked for that to be in bold. And let's say for my dog, I want to put disgusting smells in italics. So I'm just going to put a single asterisk on either side of that. Again, let's knit the document. There you go. So you can see my wife and kids is now in bold, and disgusting smells is now in italic. Wouldn't it be good if we could put an image of my dog? Because it's my dog's favourite things, but we don't know what he looks like. Now, images are pretty easy to put in. So you put them in by using an exclamation mark and square brackets, and then some round brackets. So within the square brackets, you can optionally put a caption, and within the round brackets, you put the file path for the image. So for example, I've got on this slide a general, the general format of what you put in. So exclamation mark, square brackets, and within the square brackets, you can write a caption, but you don't have to. And then within round brackets, you put the file path for the image. And then underneath, I've got a specific example of where I've tried to put in this figure. So I've put the file path for the image of Milton, my dog, which is in the images folder that we created earlier on. And the image file name was called Milton Circle 2019.png. And I've decided to give this image the caption of my lovely spaniel, figure 1, my lovely spaniel. Let's try that out in our RStudio document. So things my dog likes. So underneath there, I'm going to put my dog is called Milton. He's lovely. Here's a picture of him. So then we put the exclamation mark, square brackets, round brackets, and we want to link to that photo that's in images. And it was Milton Circle 2019.png. Then we type the exclamation mark, square brackets, round brackets, and then within the round brackets we want to put the location of the image that we want to put in. Now, our Markdown document is in a folder called RDoc, so the first thing we need to do is come out of that folder, and we can do that with a double dot, which was explained in a previous tutorial. So that takes us out of RDocs and into the main project folder, and from there we want to go into images, and within images the file is called Milton Circle 2019.png, and RStudio helpfully shows us what that picture is. We could caption this by putting something in the square brackets. Milton. Right, let's knit this. So now, in our document, things my dog likes, we've got this lovely massive picture of Milton. We can try to resize this picture by putting some curly brackets and putting width equals 50%, for example. And then when we knit it, it will be smaller than it was before. And if we do it, say 20%, it's going to get smaller still. So you can resize images by, after the round brackets, putting some curly brackets and putting width equals and then a percentage, and it will scale it by that percent. Okay, so that's images. You can put hyperlinks in as well. And again, you do that with square brackets and round brackets. So you put the text that you want the hyperlink on within square brackets, and then in round brackets afterwards you put the web address that you're trying to link to. So in the example we got here, I've got a sentence about a package that I wrote for R, and it says the Advento package, which is what it's called, and it tells you to get it from, and then my web page. So when we knit this, it actually looks like this. So this stuff in pink is the hyperlinked text. So if we were to click on that, it would actually take us to that website. So let's have a look at doing this in our main document. So let's say, for example, in my list of favorite things, I wanted to put a hyperlink to the Iron Maiden webpage. So I put that text in square brackets. So that's the text that I want the link to be from. In round brackets afterwards, we are going to put http www.ironmaiden.com. That's the web address that we're linking to. Knit the document. So now the first bullet in my list is a hyperlink, and if we click on that, it takes us to Iron Maiden's website. Marvelous. That is some of the basics of formatting using Markdown. You can actually, once you get into it, you can do a lot more sophisticated stuff than this, but this will get you going with stuff like headings, bold and italics, hyperlinks and pictures. So just have a play around, try and create yourself a little document about yourself or about your friends, and that's it. Bye for now.